everyone, today we are continuing factorizing a quadratic expression. So just to recap last video, we discussed what a quadratic is. It's an expression in this form, ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b and c are constants or numbers. A quadratic has two factors, and in our first case we had where a is equal to 1. In this case, we are looking at when a is not equal to 1. So we can follow these steps to factorize a quadratic. Our first step is to identify the values of a, b, and c. Next, we are going to find the value of a product ABC, so multiplying those two numbers. Our third step, find two numbers when multiplied will give the value of AC, but when added will give the value of B. We are going to rewrite the quadratic and then factorize. So we'll go over these steps again in the example. Alright, let's look at our first example. Factorize the following: 3x squared minus x minus 2. So following our steps, the first step is to identify the values of a, b, and c. So from our expression, we have a is a number in front of x squared, which is 3, b is a number in front of x, which is minus 1, and c is the constant value, minus 2. Once we have identified the values of a, b, and c, we go to the next step, which is to find the value of the product AC. So product means to multiply. So a multiplied by c would be 3 multiplied by minus 2, which gives us minus 6. Our next step is written here. Find two numbers when multiplied would give the value of AC, but when added would give the value of B. So in this case, we want two numbers when we multiply we would get minus 6, but when we add those two numbers we must get the value of b, which is minus 1. So just as we did in our first video, where we listed all the possible combinations of numbers when we multiply that would give minus 6, and then we figure out which combination will give us the value of b when we add them, it's a similar process. So on the side, we could look at numbers that would give us minus 6 when we multiply. So we have numbers that will give us minus 6 when we multiply will be 1 and negative 6, or minus 1 and positive 6. Also, minus 2 by 3 will also give us minus 6. Similarly, 2 multiplied by minus 3 would also give us minus 6. Now the second part of the criteria would be when added they give the value of b, which is minus 1. So when we add these two numbers we need to get minus 1. So 1 plus minus 6 gives us minus 5, so this one is not it. Then we have minus 1 plus 6, which gives us 5, so this one is also not it. Then minus 2 plus 3 gives us 1, still not our answer. And then our last option is 2 add minus 3 gives us minus 1, and this is our combination that we are looking for. Alright, so from here, after we found these two numbers, we are going to rewrite the quadratic as stated in our next step. Rewrite the quadratic expression, replacing the x term by these two numbers followed by x. So from our original quadratic, since I'm using minus 3 and 2 in any order, it could have been 2 here and then minus 3. We are replacing this middle x term using these two numbers with an x after it. So we'll have 3x squared, and instead of minus x we are going to write minus 3x plus 2, and then our minus 2 from here. So our next step would be to factorize in pairs. So if we look at these four terms, all four of them do not have a common factor. However, some terms have a common factor. which means that we could factorize in pairs. So from our first pair of terms that I'm looking at, we have common factors would be 3 and x. So if we factorize 3x, in brackets, we would be left with x minus 1. Looking at our second pair of terms, we would have 2x minus 2, and from this pair we can factorize 2, and in brackets you'll have x minus 1. Now we can factorize one step further. If we look at the next line, both brackets here are the same. So then we can factorize x minus 1 from both terms. And if I factorize x minus 1 from the first term, I'll have 3x. And if I factorize x minus 1 from the second term, I'll have plus 2. So the 3x plus 2 goes in one bracket, and the x minus 1 goes in another bracket. And just as before, in our previous video, we can also expand the brackets on the side just to verify if our answer is correct. So expanding the brackets of our answer, 3x multiplied by x will give us 3x squared. 3x multiplied by minus 1 will give us minus 3x. 2 by x will give us 2x. And 2 by minus 1 gives us minus 2. And just simplifying this part of it, we'll have 3x squared minus x minus 2. And this is the question that we started with. And once we have gotten back that equation, it means that our factors would be correct. So this is your final answer for this part. We are going to look at another example. The question is written here. Question 2, 2x squared plus 9x minus 18. If you would like to attempt this question on your own, feel free to pause the video for a minute and try it, and then you can press play and see the solution. If not, we can discuss the solution as well. So looking at our steps to follow again, the first step is to identify the values of a, b, and c. From our quadratic, a is a number in front of x squared, which is 2, b is a number in front of x, which is 9, and c is the constant with minus 18. Find the product AC. A multiplied by c will be 2 multiplied by minus 18, which gives minus 36. Find two numbers when multiplied will give AC, but when added will give the value of B. In this case, we want two numbers that when we multiply we would get minus 36, but when we add them we want to get the value of B, which is 9. So again, we can start off by listing a combination of numbers when multiplied will give minus 36, just as we did before. So minus 36 numbers we can use would be 6 by minus 6. We can use 12 multiplied by minus 3, minus 12 multiplied by 3. All of these would give 36, negative 36 when we multiply. But our second criteria is that when we add them, we need to get 9. So if we add these, we are going to get 0. So this is not it. For the other combination, we have 12 plus minus 3, and this will give us 9, and this is our value of B that we need. So at this point we can stop here, no need to go further. But if we do, 12 plus 3 will give us minus 9, which is not our B. Our value of B is positive 9. So our combination that we are going to use would be 12 and minus 3. So as seen in our solution, using 12 and minus 3, we are rewriting the quadratic, and we are replacing the middle term or the x term by these two numbers followed by an x. So we'll have the 2x squared. Instead of the 9x, I'm going to write 12x minus 3, and there's a minus 18 from before. Our next step would be factorize in pairs. So just as we did before, we are going to look for common factors within our first two terms. So looking here in our first pair, we see that we can factorize 2x and we'll be left with x plus 6 in brackets. And then looking at our second pair, we can factorize a minus 3 and we'll be left with x plus 6 in brackets again. So from here, at this point, both our brackets are the same. So then, if I have an x plus 6 and an x plus 6, that's also a common factor. So if we factorize x plus 6 from both of them, from the first term I'll be left with the 2x. From the second term I'll be left with minus 3. So we write the 2x and the minus 3 in one bracket, and then the x plus 6 in the other bracket. Again, just as before, to double check, we can rewrite our factors on the side and expand the brackets just to be sure that what we did so far is correct. So our answer, we have 2x minus 3 by x plus 6. So if I expand the brackets, 2x multiplied by x will give us 2x squared. 2x multiplied by 6 will give me 12x minus 3 by x minus 3x, and minus 3 by 6 gives minus 18. And then just simplifying this middle part of it, we would have 2x squared plus 9x minus 18. And once we get back the same expression that we started off with at the beginning of the question, then we know that our factors are correct. Okay, so next we are going to move on to example number 3. So again, I'm giving you the option to try it if you would like to before we look at the solution. So at this point, you can pause the video and attempt the question. Okay, now we are going to look at the solution for this question. Our first step again is to identify the values of a, b, and c. So after this point, we see that a is 5, b is minus 11, and c is 2. So our product AC would be 5 multiplied by 2, which gives us 10. We are going to find two numbers when multiplied would give the value of AC, but when added would give the value of B. So two numbers when multiplied will give 10, but when added will give minus 11. So just as before, again, we can write our possible combinations when multiplied would give us 10. So we have 1 multiplied by 10. Next, minus 1 multiplied by minus 10 would also give us 10. Also, we have 2 by 5 will give us 10, as well as minus 2 multiplied by minus 5. So the second part of the criteria is that when we add the two numbers, we need to get the value of b, which is minus 11. So if we add both of them, we have 1 plus 10, which gives us 11. So this is not it. Then I have minus 1 plus minus 10, which gives minus 11, and we have found our combination already, so there's no need to go further. So once we have found those two numbers, we are rewriting the quadratic, replacing the middle term by these two numbers followed by x. So instead of this minus 11x, I'm writing the minus 10 minus 1 followed by an x. Next step would be to factorize in pairs. So if we look at the first two terms, we can see that we can factorize 5x and we'll be left with x minus 2 in brackets, as well as if I look at the second pair of terms, I would see that we can factorize minus 1 and I'll have x minus 2 in brackets. Now the reason why I factorized minus 1 instead of just 1 is because I want my two brackets to be the same so that I could factorize further. And if I had factorized positive 1 here, then in brackets I would have had minus x plus 2. Which is not the same as the other brackets. So now that we have both brackets being the same, then we could factorize one step further to get our final answer. So if we factorize the x minus 2, then from the first term we'll have 5x, from the second term we'll have minus 1 in one bracket, and then the x minus 2 in the other bracket. And just as our previous question, we could rewrite our two factors on the side, expand the brackets, and see if you get back the same expression, 5x squared minus 11x plus 2, so that you'll know it is correct. Okay, so moving on to our last example for this video, we have example 4, 2x squared plus 11x plus 14. So again, if you would like to attempt a question before we do the solution, feel free to pause the video. If not, you can continue to look at the solution. So our next step, identify the values of a, b, and c. So from our quadratic, a is 2, b is 11, and c is 14. Finding the product AC, we have 2 multiplied by 14, which is 28. And we need to find two numbers when multiplied would give the value of AC, but when added would give the value of B. So in this case, two numbers when multiplied will give 28, but when added would give 11. So to go about doing the question just as before, we can list the combination of numbers when multiplied would give 28. So 1 by 28 will give us 28. Similarly, minus 1 by minus 28. Then we have 7 multiplied by 4 will give 28. Also, minus 7 multiplied by minus 4 would also give us 28. And then our second part of the criteria is which pair, when we add it, would give the value of b, which is 11. So 1 plus 28 is equal to 29. So this is not it. Minus 1 minus 28 is going to give us minus 29. So also not that value. 7 plus 4 gives us 11, and this is the value that we need. No need to go further. So once we found our combination of values, we just rewrite our quadratic, replacing the 11x with our 7x plus 4, and then we factorize in pairs. So from our first pair, where we have the 2x squared plus 7x, we can factorize an x from those two terms, since it doesn't have a common numerical factor, and we'll be left with 2x plus 7. From a second pair of terms, we can factorize 2, and we'll be left with 2x plus 7 in brackets, and we can see that from both of our brackets being the same, that we could factorize one step further, 2x plus 7, and we'll be left with x from the first pair and plus 2 from the second pair, which is written in brackets. And similarly, just as before, we can write our two factors, expand our brackets, and see if we would get the same answer, the same question, sorry. Once you have the 2x squared plus 11x plus 14, when you expand the brackets, then it is correct. So just another thing I would like to mention, if for some reason we have a quadratic where the terms are out of order, so we have, instead of the 2x squared plus 11x plus 14, if it was written as 14 plus 2x squared plus 11x. Then before we identify the values of a, b, and c, we need to rewrite it in the order with the x squared term, the x term, and then the constant term before we could identify a, b, and c. So thank you for listening to the video, and I would send some questions for you all to practice. Any questions, feel free to contact me if there's anything that you don't understand. Okay, so look out for our next video sometime soon. Thank you.